Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. If it's your first time here, as always, it's good to see you. Today's video, as you can tell probably from my gloves if you've been following my videos, I'm going to be doing a little bit more repair work. A simple repair that anybody can do, might save you a little bit of money. Before we get into that though, as always, if you have been enjoying my series of videos, then please do subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss out on anything that I upload, any of the videos that go up. As you maybe know by now if you have been following the channel, I normally aim to upload a gameplay video midweek if I've been out to a game. And every weekend we'll look at another different aspect of Airsoft in general, trying to do it from an affordable slant, repairing your own gear, tech videos, reviews, unboxings, that type of thing really. Just looking at all sorts of different things in the airsoft world. If you do want any more content from me as well as the channel here, you can find me on Facebook as Rock Bottom Airsoft, and you can also find me on Instagram as @RockBottomAirsoft, and there's photos and things like that on there, extra content from the channel. Okay, so with that all out of the way, let's have a look at what we're going to be looking at today. Well, if you recall, we looked at a video of how to repair leaks on our gas blowback magazines, primarily for our sidearms. A cheap, simple fix that will normally repair the majority of leaks on a gas blowback sidearm magazine. Now in this one, when I was at a game, I managed to damage 2 of my magazines. Something that I've done before. This fault on this magazine, if you can make it out on camera, is not quite so common. The feed lips are broke on the magazine. If you can see there, the follower's okay, but the feed lips have cracked off on one side. So today I'm going to show you how to change the feed lips on a G series gas blowback replica magazine. That's a relatively simple job. We shouldn't have too many problems with that. And then the other fault that is possibly more common with these G series magazines, this is a G series extended magazine. Now, as many as you know, one of these can set you back anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds for one of these magazines. So you know, it's a lot simpler to fix it where we can. Now what's happened with this one, if you can make it out, is the follower has snapped. You see how the follower is staying in the feed lips and not going down with the spring. So the follower has actually snapped on this one. Now that was down to my own error. I make plenty of mistakes in airsoft. I did a video a while ago of useful items you might want in airsoft, and one of the things I recommended was one of the easy loading tools that helps pull down your follower for you, a thumb saver. I actually forgot mine at a game, so I was holding the follower down with my thumb while loading the magazine, and unfortunately it slipped out of my hand, shot all the way to the top and snapped the follower. Not the first time I've done that, probably won't be the last, but this is basically how you can fix that. So let's get the trusty mat out. If you've been following me, as you know by now, got to save this work surface, so we get our mat out and we can crack on. Now what you're going to need for this, obviously you're going to need your damaged magazines. On this one we're going to be changing the feed lips on it. The follower is still intact as far as I can tell, and on this one we're just going to be changing the follower, but being an extended magazine, it's a slightly different procedure to do it. What tools are you going to need? Well, first of all, you're going to need a replacement set of feed lips, which is these, and for this one, a replacement magazine follower, which is this one. Now, these particular items, as you can probably tell, are Raven. I know, a lot of people seem to not be very big fans of Raven products. I've not in the whole had many problems with my Raven products that I've tried and tested in the field. These are both Raven G series magazines. Yes, they are broke, but these items to replace the broken parts are relatively inexpensive. The magazines are affordable, not much more affordable than other brands, say WeTech or anything like that. But for a set of lips, you're looking between £8 and £10, and for the follower, I think that was around about £4. Got these items at Bullseye Country Sport here in the UK. They're based over in Ireland. They're a very good supplier of parts. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get these two replacement items, which are one of the most common things you'll need to replace on a G series magazine. And these items are fine. If you prefer to get WeTech ones, you can do, that's no problem, or any other brand that you prefer. Plenty of people sell these replacements. That's just what I'm using today. Okay, now what tools will we need? Well, we're going to need a posi drive or Phillips head screwdriver. We are going to need a punch to punch out these pins, and in this one, to replace the lips, we'll need to punch out that pin there. Now, depending on what size punches you have, if you haven't got the correct size punch at a push, what I've used in the past is you can use one of your Allen keys or hex keys, depending on what you want to call them now. Be very careful, because you can break your hex keys doing this, which I have on one of my hex keys here. But obviously, if you have something small enough that will punch that pin out, preferably without a sharp point on it, because that could damage the pin, then by all means use one of those. Now, you could also use a hammer or a rubber mallet or something like that. I have been known to do that in the past. What I tend to start with, these are heavy duty screwdrivers, primarily used in the automotive industry. I tend to just tap them out with the back of my screwdriver handle. I find it's not too heavy, it's rubberized, and it's not going to damage anything. If I can't get them out with that, then I'll move to a mallet. Okay, so let's move some of this out of the way and we shall make a start. I think the first thing we'll do is have a look at the feed lips on this magazine. Now, we'll need to take these out of the packet, obviously, so we'll get these out of here. Get rid of the rubbish. And that's our replacement feed lips. Now, whenever you are replacing a part, it's worth just holding it close to the item that you are going to be replacing, just to ensure that it is the correct part that you've been sent and that it looks similar to what you're going to be replacing it with. In this case, I would say that that is the same part, so we're good to go on that one. Another thing that we should never forget when we're dealing with a gas magazine, in gas magazines we obviously don't want to have a lot of gas escape when we disassemble the magazine. So we have our valve at the back here. Now, I would not normally recommend to press this and let all the gas out on a regular basis, because it's going to dry out your seals, it's going to make them cold, but for safety we shall press that button, and as you can see, when you press that, remembering to point it away from yourself and away from anybody else, point it away from anything you don't want to get a jet of green gas all over. So that magazine is completely empty now, there's nothing going to come out of that. Now, to get these lips out, we're going to have to knock that pin out. Now, that spring, as you can tell, is under tension. So what I tend to do is remove this base plate, as we do when we grease up these magazines, and I'm also going to remove this screw on the base. So I'm just going to do that just now. Okay, so we remove that screw, that's that screw out. Be careful not to lose the O-ring on the bottom there. You can probably make out on camera that O-ring does provide a gas seal. You don't want that to be damaged as well, check it over. It will be worth greasing these O-rings when we've finished, just to ensure that we haven't wiped any grease off. And then we need to get this base off. Everything is well greased up in the case of my magazines. I always like to make sure they're well and truly greased. It might be quite stiff on the bottom of there. We'll take that out. As you can see, very greased up. Now, you're going to keep hold of this follower here. We don't want that to come springing out, and we don't want to lose it. I would remove the entire thing at this point. You can keep it all together if you prefer, and then you know how it goes back in, but that's basically the follower out. So now we've got our magazine ready to knock this pin out. Now, my smallest punch is going to be too big for that pin, so I'm going to have to use one of these Allen keys, like I said, to knock the pin out. Now we need that pin out so that we can change these lips. So we'll put the Allen key of choice over there. Okay guys, so once you've got the pin out, I don't know if you can make it out on camera, but there is knurling on one side. So just remember that it goes back in the opposite way that it came out, so your knurling will mount up. So that'll push in that way. Okay, so we'll keep that the way up, and then we know which way around it goes. Sometimes let's use a pair of pliers to pull it out if it's a little bit stiff, rather than knocking it out the whole way. You can knock it out the whole way if you prefer. You know, it doesn't matter if you use the pliers. So now, as you can see, our feed lips are free to be removed. So we can pull that out of there. Now, what you might notice on this one, compared to the new one does not have this rubber O-ring in it. So we'll push that out of the old one, because obviously that's not damaged. You can see how that comes out there. Put the old one to the side, and then push that back in the new one. There's plenty of grease on this one. At this point, if it was dry, it would be worth applying some lubrication to it, make sure that it's not dry. We don't want anything to be dry on there. And then once that is flush into the bottom, we then reinstall it the same as how we took it off, which is just like that. Take our pin, remembering the knurling that I mentioned, push the pin in. Oh. Push the pin in. I want my hands covered in grease now. To get that back in there. Might need a little bit of persuasion. Okay, so once your pin is in, and that is your feed lip secure to the top of the magazine, the next step is to replace our follower, which, if you remember, we took apart earlier. So we need the spring, we need the follower. We'll slide it back in the reverse where it came out, like so. So that's your spring in, your follower back in. Next, you need to replace the end here, push that back in. Now remember to keep tension on this, the end of the follower, because it is going to try and flick out until you get the base of the magazine back in. So once you've got the base of the magazine back in, you're okay. That can't come out now, it's captive on there. So we put that back in. Next up, I'm going to put the screw back in, like so. Okay, so that's that tightened back down, bottom sealed back up, get our end cap, put that back on, which, if you remember my last video on greasing these, can be quite fiddly, but once that's on, then there you go. We now have a functional G series magazine again. That is repaired. And get rid of the broken feed lips. Compare it to one that works, and it's exactly the same. So there we go. That one's repaired. That one is ready to go now. That one can be used in game again. Now next up we have, of course, the extended magazine. Now on this one, the only fault we've got with this one is that the follower is broke. It snapped off, so we need to replace that. Now this one, again, we have to remove the end cap, as with all these. Now unfortunately, on the extended magazines, as you can see, there is no screw on the bottom like we had on the other one to get the spring out. So on this one, we have to knock these two pins out here. As you can see, there's two pins at the bottom. Those pins hold that base cap in place. we need to remove those in order to get the follower out. As with all these magazines, make sure you vent the gas out of it before you do it. And then take the 2 pins out at the bottom. Remove the spring like we did on this one. The follower will come with it, and then at that point you can replace the magazine follower on the top of the spring there. So I'll go ahead and do that. There's a lot of gas in this one. You see how it's frozen up on the end? That's why we don't like to vent these magazines that way. But I'll go ahead and do this one, and then I'll come back. Just the same as the screw in these ones, this is under tension, obviously from the follower. And as you saw, it will spring off, and it is quite a long follower on this magazine if you don't keep hold of it. But we've taken it off. That's come off no problem. The pins are out. We can remove the old follower from the bottom there. So as you can see, that follower is broke. That's the other piece of the follower there. So all we have to do to replace that is take our new follower out the packet. Get rid of the rubbish there. So that's our new follower. That's what it should look like. We shall replace that now. It can only go one way up, as you can see, because you've got the little thumb catch on there for you to slide it down with. So you know it's going to go that way. So the easiest way I find is you can locate it onto the end of the spring. Take your spring and feed the whole lot back up into the magazine like so. Now this one is a little bit trickier to hold. It can help if you rest it on its side. Take your base plate, put it back in. That will keep it captive. So now all you have to do is keep your hand on the base plate, and then we need to put these pins back in. So let's take the pins. Remembering your knurled edges that we mentioned earlier. So make sure they go in, the way that they came out. These ones should push in quite easily to get them started, and then once they're located, you can't go wrong. But don't try to force these things. Now the back of my screwdriver here is plastic, as you can probably see, so it's not going to damage the steel. So I can just bash them back in with that, and that is them located. Once they are located like so, you can see they're now flush. That can't come out. The base is secure. We've got our new magazine follower on there. So that's that repaired. We can put our base plate back on, which is just the same as the standard magazine on these extended. The only difference is that you've got a screw on the bottom of these ones, and you've got 2 pins on the bottom of this one. So that's 2 magazines that were non-functional. Those magazines are now functional. So I hope that was easy enough to follow. If there's the couple bits of advice that I would always give is that always vent the gas on these before you start working on them. If I was to try and take those base plates off with this pressurized, that could end up with all sorts of accidents, damage to your home, all sorts. It's going to come firing out of there under pressure with a load of gas behind it. So always vent your magazines with the valve. Make sure there's no gas in them before you start. If you're replacing feed lips, then you need to knock out the pin at the top here. Remember, when you replace feed lips, to retain the rubber. You want that seal, because that's what seals up with the pistol itself on the slide. So you want to retain that. While you've got them apart, it's always worth putting a bit of silicone grease on all of your O-rings and seals that you encounter, just to preempt any possibility of dried seals or leaks. That will prevent them. Try to keep pressure on the bottom of the magazine in both situations, whether you're removing the screw or whether you're removing pins. Keep pressure on the bottom so that they don't let go all of a sudden and you lose parts of your magazine follower. Remove it slowly, take the follower out, put it to one side, keep it safe. If you're only changing the follower, then obviously you're going to need to remove the base of the magazine, take the follower out and replace your follower. It's quite common for those to break. if you're replacing the feed lips, then you are going to need to knock that pin out at the top. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you can make use of it and save yourself a bit of money. As I say, you're looking at around about £10 at most for a set of feed lips, £3 or £4 for a magazine follower, whereas you're looking at £50 for one of those magazines, £30 to £35 for one of those magazines. So if you have a G series pistol magazine, well worth trying to repair it. Rather than buying a new one, it'll save you some money. It's quite a simple job. You can do it with pretty basic tools. So if you did find that video useful and you enjoyed it, then please drop a like on it. If you want to see more content from me, then as I mentioned earlier, then please subscribe to the channel, and then you'll always be kept up to date when I upload a new video. But in the meantime, I hope that your gas magazines stay tight and you have some good games this summer, and I will see you in the next one.